Oda has been concealing 4 Holy Knights in plain sight for years, including potentially a Straw Hat Pirate and 2 of the all-time most powerful characters to ever sail the 4 Blues. And when I say that Oda has been hiding these for years, I don't just mean a year or 2 here, I mean that there is a character that could have been hinting at the legendary Celestial Dragon Warriors for up to 27 years of One Piece story. And chapter 1147 may have given us a glimpse at yet another one, seeing as Saul has now confirmed that he not only knows about the Holy Knights, but also that they are in fact immortal, which is kind of huge, even though we already kind of guessed that, but my theorist senses have been absolutely off the charts. And if you're stoned yet, don't worry, I've got you, dude, because I mentioned it briefly last week, but if you missed the ending of that video, let me clue you in on where my head is right now. I'm proposing the idea that Brooke, the Straw Hat musician, yeah, that guy, might actually have been a former Holy Knight, because straight up, this bag of bones seems to have some very weird and specific knowledge about the Holy Knights compared to anyone else in the crew and every other key player in this arc, except maybe Scopper, Gaban, and Saul right here. Now, I'll touch on Saul here in just a moment, but at least Scopper makes some sense, because he fought against them on God Valley, remember? And at this rate, it's becoming more and more likely that he's gonna end up getting a battle against Summers here. Especially considering that, yes, they're both emissaries of love, but mostly the fact that at the end of this chapter, Scopper is on the hunt for Colin, and we do know that Summers is the one initiating the Holy Knight's retreat now after stealing Colin and the other giant kids. And so keeping all of this in mind, I wouldn't be too surprised if Oda hints at it being a rematch of some sort, because maybe, just maybe, they might have some history from God Valley or maybe Gaban's pirate days. My point here is that it makes a lot of sense for Scopper here to acknowledge and identify the Holy Knights due to his previous battle experiences that he had with this group. The same cannot be said though about Brooke, at least from what we know about him. Yes, he was a member of a pretty decent pirate crew, the Rumbar Pirates, and was a former battle convoy leader in some far-off nation, but now apparently it's been revealed in Elbaf that this dude not only knows about the Holy Knight's existence, which by itself is kind of weird, but he's also very confident in his ability to discern which celestial dragons are Holy Knights and which ones are not. And even if understandably you're not quite yet on board here with me, you have to admit that this is an impressive level of knowledge, considering that these Knights of God are a absolutely secret force that nobody in the series besides Dragon, I guess, and the Revolutionaries has ever even mentioned before. And at least with Dragon, we can logically assume that either his time in the world government, his position as Garb's son, or his connection with Kuma and Ivankov, 2 people who were hunted by the Holy Knights, would very easily explain why he would know so much about them. But Brooke actually doubles down in this chapter, where after getting a closer look at Gunko here, Brooke makes a really odd comment about recognizing something about her. He says, that lady? No, there is no way. Which, I mean, is it likely this could be a panty joke? I guess so, but there's also a really good chance that he's clocked something about Gunko due to his personal history with, or potentially even as, a Holy Knight. You see, Brooke has some really interesting tendencies, habits, and narrative framing that would surprisingly align really nicely with the Holy Knights, and I did want to discuss those with you right now. Things like the way that he dresses, the way that he speaks, and the way that he holds himself in general. I mean, yes, he has some extremely pervy tendencies, but he's also been sailing the high seas for like 70 years or something. So your mind sort of devolves at that point, which kind of gives him an excuse, I guess, unlike Sanji here. Besides just that though, Brooke holds himself in really high regard. His speech is extremely formal, especially in Japanese, in how he talks and holds himself, and he dresses very elegantly pre-time skip, very much like a celestial dragon would very much do as well. The trills on his shirt and his regal garb are fairly similar to Shamrock's outfit accents when you look at the 2 compared next to each other. And I also want to note, post-time skip, he wears the same kind of feather boa as Doflamingo, who, by the way, is also a former celestial dragon. But most importantly, his sword style is the fighting style of the royal class, because despite using a cane sword, his actual fighting style isn't a Japanese style of combat at all. He's a fencer. He's trained in a high-class European noble fighting form. This isn't something you just bust out if you were a pirate. You'd use it properly if you were trained from a young age to actually be really good at this. Now, of course, I can't look into Oda's head and confirm whether he's actually making the case here in the series, but he does seem to be pulling from some very real historical context in general, and especially when he frames Brooke's character. And so I do think that there's a really direct case to be made that he is actually framing the Holy Knights to use this style of fighting as well, because there are 3 specific characters who use the swords necessary for this very style of fighting, and 2 of them are, well, the commanders of the Holy Knights. Because all Figarland Garling, Figarland Shamrock, and yes, even Figarland Shanks, they all use a saber, which is a military blade that was adapted and used for fencing in battles. Not to be confused with a foil, which is a different fencing blade focused on just the thrusts. However, we also know that Shanks is kind of using it incorrectly and much more loosely based on the moves that he uses, something like Divine Departure, which, you know, would pretty easily be explained by the fact that he grew up as a pirate. And then if we also consider the fact that Gunko made a saber out of arrows to battle in this very chapter, I do think this type of sword being tied to the Holy Knights is a pretty solid connection. I hope you agree. Now, I just find it very interesting that in the very same arc where Garling becomes a member of the Gorosei and Shamrock is first introduced, we not only see some of the other Holy Knights, but Brooke knows about them, dresses like them, and is narratively tied to them in multiple ways. Alright, stop for a second. What do I even mean by that last point, right? Like narrative ties? Well, the thing is that Gunko and Brooke are being presented in this very unique situation compared to everyone else in their little battle here. I mean, Jinbei's giving it all he's got, but Gunko is only focused and really only focused on Brooke, and Brooke in turn is using Gunko to explain to his crew that the Holy Knights are even a thing, which, you know, the Straw Hats didn't even know about. Now, Brooke has, of course, his immortality powers of his devil fruit and is the one who comments on Gunko's immortal body. Now, of course, there's also this really fun gag about Gunko being a fangirl for Brooke, so much so that she wants to make him her slave, but also it's that specific connection that is really sticking out to me, and my Oda senses are kind of tingling here, because I'm mostly just happy, first of all, that Oda addressed the fact that Gunko is Brooke's fan specifically right away, since he didn't do that last chapter. And I mean, I guess it could definitely just be Oda giving her a very, you know, unique little extra quirk here, but I do kind of feel like I've got a pretty good grasp after all these years on Oda's little foreshadowing tricks and techniques, and this one very much feels like one of them, because I kind of feel like Oda wants us to see some deeper connection between Brooke and Gunko, not in terms of them being related or anything like that, just that there is something more that kind of connects these 2 characters. Because today's video is sponsored by Tokyo Tree. Wait, where's the boss? Ah, Manu, good to see you. It's me, the Fleet Admiral, and I'm starving. This mission searching for the top secret hidden poneglyph on Elbaf sure works up an appetite, and luckily, I just received this month's box from Tokyo Treat. Wait, that package has my name on it. What? Not anymore! It includes awesome snacks like these salted caramel Kit Kats, and this month's theme of Japan, Snack Fari, means tons of awesome animal-themed treats, which I think Gunko is jealous of because she's eyeing my Lucky Giraffe, Mayo Curry chips, and my Fiery Fox radish bites as well. Come on, dude, I really wanted to try these. Like, foxes are my entire thing. These look so good. Oh, did I mention that the cultural booklet that comes with each of these boxes features awesome cultural facts and information about each snack included? It even has allergen information so that I can avoid my one and only weakness, shellfish. Ooh. That's your only weakness? Each month you'll get a rare Kit Kat flavor, limited edition chips, noodles, and the latest treats from Japan straight to you. Make sure to sign up for Tokyo Treat so you can enjoy Japan's greatest snacks from the comfort of your own home, and use the link in the description and use my code Ohara for $5 off your first order. Alright, I've got to get going. It looks like they just fed Loki some Tokyo Treats and he's making a great recovery, so we need to leave. Well, back to the video. And actually, now that I'm talking about, I'm just right now connecting the idea that Brooke never told us the kingdom that he was actually from, because based on his introduction, we just know that it was the Rumber pirates who spent a lot of time in the West Blue. As far as I can remember and find looking back into Brooke's backstory, he isn't actually from the West Blue, not officially according to Oda at least. And I kind of find it odd that Oda throws kingdom names around left and right when they aren't relevant, yet purposefully abstain from ever telling us where Brooke is really from. Well, what if this is because the kingdom he was a former battle convoy leader in wasn't just any kingdom, it was God's kingdom? And he might have even been telling us from day one that he was a previous member of the Holy Knights before he then eventually disagreed with their methods and joined the Rumber Pirates instead. I mean, that sure as heck would really make for an amazing late game reveal that's been seeded for years and years without us ever realizing. And yet somehow there is an even better candidate in the story, I think, who hits all the same marks and was introduced years before Brooke even. Someone just as elegant, far more powerful, and admittedly with some stronger evidence than even Brooke pointing to him being tied to this group. This might not come as a surprise, but I'm of course talking about everyone's favorite Blackblade user, Dracul Mihawk. And just hold your horses here for a couple of minutes because I think I uncovered some stuff about his heritage that I don't think anyone else is talking about at this point in regard to the Holy Knight Mihawk connection that we want to build here. All right, let's face it. There is nobody who screams, "I might be a former Celestial Dragon, hello," more than Hawkeye's right here, because he's got the paisley shirt with the nice buttons, he's got the stylish hat that just reeks of royalty, he lives in a goddamn castle, I mean, and he does drink wine all day, red wine by the way, so there isn't anything more God of the World vibe than all of that stuff here. And even just on design alone, if you put a few war medals on him and gave him the Holy Knight's hat, I'd say you've got yourself a pretty perfect match. But of course, it's way more than just that. He's also nailing the holy part of being a Holy Knight better than any of these guys actually do. His sword is a giant cross, his boat is also a giant cross, I guess, and he does wear a little, cross sword around his neck at all times, which, I mean, just to point it out here, he uses as a super small fencing foil in his introduction as he, uses the fencing forms to just absolutely destroy Zoro in their first confrontation here. I just quickly had to point this out because I'm all in on this fencing thing for the time being. So, old fencing Manu, they call me out here in Tokyo for a reason. Actually not, but you get the idea. Now, I actually haven't covered my favorite point about Mihawk potentially being a former Celestial Dragon and possibly a Holy Knight, and that's his clan. Mihawk's a member of the Dracul family, whoever those guys are, but no, it's not just whoever, because despite not knowing anyone else that has this family name, I am pretty confident that Mihawk is from one of the 20 families that, became the Celestial Dragons. But also, they may be one of the key families amongst the Celestial Dragons. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. Grab your history books here, because it's now time for us to break down the etymology, the word meanings, and everything that we can find about Mihawk's actual name. So, Dracul Mihawk. Seeing how he has the whole goth vampire look and theme going on, we do know it's based on Dracula. Now, unless you're a huge Bram Stoker fan, which I know you probably aren't, you probably don't know that Dracula was actually a high-class nobleman that really existed, and not only that, but the man Dracula is based on, Vlad the Impaler, actually changed his name to Dracula, a term that does mean the son of Dracul. Now, son of Dracul actually translates to the son of the dragon. Vlad did this name change after he joined a real-life organization, and I'm not making this up, called the Order of the Dragon, whose whole goal was to fight against the enemies of Christianity. And seeing as the Holy Land Marijua is primarily themed around Christianity as well, with all the crosses, references to Adam and Eve, and everyone being saints, I think there is a pretty solid case here to be made that the Dracul clan either is one of the Celestial Dragon families, or Mihawk changed his name from one of the families, his actual family name, to Dracul, the son of the dragon, as a, subtle nod to his heritage as a former Celestial Dragon. Which I personally would actually like quite a lot, because I think that it would make the most sense if Mihawk were actually a former member of the Nerona family. That's because he's of course the only other character that is rocking the very weird circular eye thing that, you know, Nerona Emu has as well. I mean, look at these balls, these eyeballs side by side. They're pretty much identical. I mean, we've known this for a while. It's always been weird, and, you know, I'll be the last person to point this out, but I'm gonna take it a step further here and show why Mihawk being a Nerona family member and then taking on the Dracul name makes a bunch of sense when you take into account what happened with the Figarland family. All right, here's the deal. Ever since the Elbaf arc started, it seemed like the Figarland family is being framed to have some deeper ties to Norse mythology. Shanks is obviously very close with the giants, and his ship is just this entire Viking thing, but on top of that, the story of him losing his arm and his family leading the charge towards Ragnarok lines up incredibly well with the stories of Fenrir and his two sons, Skull and Hati. Now, these three wolves are the bringers of Ragnarok and have been theorized to be inspirations behind Shanks, Shamrock, and Garling. And even though I haven't talked about this on the channel, I think, and it's very interesting, I don't want to dive too deep into it at this point, but the long story short of it is that when you also take into account the fact that Shamrock's sword is a three-headed wolf or dog, the Cerberus, these mythological wolf ties can run very deep throughout the Figarland family, which makes it all that much better that Shanks' rival is a literal vampire man. Like, Dracul Mihawk, who I've been theorizing is a former Holy Knight in training, just like Shamrock and Garling, completes the very iconic duality of werewolves and vampires, because Oda loves his tropes, and seeing a family of werewolves have their youngest son be rivals with a vampire family member makes a ton of sense to me. It also lines up quite nicely with the fact that Nerona Emu is the king of the world, and the family directly below him who runs his private fighting force is the Figarland family. And so the Neronas being vampire themed while the Figarlands are wolf themed could give a ton of credence to, you know, this warlord being a former Holy Knight theory. But not only that, there are also some implications as of recent chapters, including this new one, that have led me to believe that there may have been another secret Holy Knight on Elbaf, one that has been there the entire time. You see, after Saul casually starts talking about how the Holy Knights were immortal in this chapter, 1147, I started to think a little bit deeper about all the weird Holy Knight stuff going on in this arc, how they'll be defeated, and who will be able to do it. Which kind of led me to connect some dots that I hadn't really thought about and connected up until now, because between you and me, I think, and you won't believe this, Harold may be a bad guy. Yeah, you know, I mean, I literally talk about it almost every single chapter review, it seems, but with that lens I tend to look through, I noticed that he's really connected to the Holy Knights in a really weird and bizarre way. Think about it, them summoning themselves into his throne room, Summers remarking that Shamrock was there to possibly visit his grave, and then most recently Summers blaming him for allowing a school to be built on the island, which, as I'm pretty sure you noticed, is really odd considering that Harold was the king of a nation that was not supposed to like the world government or the Holy Knights. So why might he be all buddy-buddy with one or multiple of these people? I guess it makes a bunch of sense if he was planted there by them as a way to destabilize the country and prepare them for the Holy Knights' final arrival right now. Because let's face it, he was a super powerful king that had ties to the world government elite forces, which is a very suspicious look, may I add. So even if he technically wasn't one of the Holy Knights, it makes a ton of sense that he might have been affiliated with them to a very strong degree. And since we don't know how Harold actually came to be king, and if it was a birthright thing or through taking over by sheer force with his immense power, you know, of his ancient giant blood, I do think that there is a lot of room here to explain that he was actually sent by the older Holy Knights to Elbaf so that he could slowly take over and shake up the country. I'd even go out on a limb and say it could help explain his ancient giant lineage too, because we do know that Emu keeps some stuff locked up in the freezers up there in Marijua, like that giant straw hat from their introduction. Actually, for a while it was a theory that the Holy Knights were ancient soldiers stored in there for the right time, but theorists, including myself, dropped that idea very quickly once we found out about Shamrock being a younger, normal person. However, this may still be the case, and it could be that in this sort of Winter Soldier way, Harold was activated and sent to Elbaf from a very long gone era to take over and also to, I guess, breed more ancient giants. This would form a very cool connection between him and Ors, another ancient giant who has been mentioned in this arc, because Oda may have used Ors to foreshadow Harold the same way that he used a character like Enel and the Skypiea arc to foreshadow Emu and Luffy's Gear 5 form. And Harold being a Holy Knight just tracks with the way that this arc is starting to unfold altogether now. Like, it would explain why they know him and why they might mourn him, but most importantly, it would explain why Loki is so freaking important to them. What do I mean by that? Well, right now the crew's in a little bit of a pickle, you see, because they don't know how to bypass the entire immortality thing of the Holy Knights, right? So if Harold was a former Holy Knight and had this same power, Loki may hold the secret to defeating them. Remember, we do know for a fact that Loki defeated his father, and I do think it would be an excellent way for Loki to bring something new to the table this arc if somehow he held the secret power to bypass this immortality. Maybe Ragnar, his epic hammer, with that he can break through it, or something to do with his potential devil fruit could help him break through their, impenetrable defenses. Whatever it is, ultimately, I just love the idea that Loki's backstory will end up revealing not only why Elbaf's plot is so crucial, but also how the crew will unlock their much needed end of series upgrades as well. Who knows when that will actually happen though, because as of right now, Robin and Scop are on the attack, not Loki, Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji, and I'm kind of eager to see what happens after we get over this hurdle of who's gonna fight who and why in this entire arc and really get into the meat and potatoes of everything going on here. Also, one other thing that just popped into my head is, remember the giant hole in the throne room, and then the summoning circle thing? Could it be that if Harold was connected to Emu, that Emu took Harold out the same way, potentially, that they took out, Saturn? Just melt him, drain all the life force from him? Could be. I mean, that would maybe explain that. But yeah, with that being said, I now want to cover the single most insane option out of all of them, the man that we're really eager to meet, that we just recently got to see in Elbaf, and the worst pirate of them all, Rox the Xebec. And yes, no joke here, I do think that this dude has all of the rhyme, reason, and potential to be a former Holy Knight candidate as well. Let's face it, throwing Xebec into Loki's backstory is a very unique choice, a very odd choice, because it lines up with the timeline and definitely helps draw a parallel between Loki and Luffy, two guys who, by the way, wield the Sun God title and are incredibly powerful. Especially when you look at the mural and see the image of Gear 5 Luffy and Loki seeming to have counterparts in Joy Boy and another ancient giants with the horns here, way back when what is probably the second world from the Harley text. And so I actually wanted to take it one step further here. Considering the fact that their stories are so full of parallels, right? I do think that Loki wanting to be like and joining Xebec is incredibly specific to bring up right now. So much so, I think, that it reveals Rox's true origin as a potential celestial dragon, because when you really look at it, Luffy started as a kid who was following a famous pirate who just so happened to be incredibly powerful and was born as a celestial dragon in the form of Shanks. And so if Loki is truly supposed to be a one-to-one darker and edgier form of Luffy, then he would also need to start as a kid who was following a famous pirate who just so happened to also be incredibly powerful and might also have been born as a celestial dragon. Alright, just in our case, it's not Shanks, it would be Rox. Rox, being the former celestial dragon, would fit in surprisingly well with the story, but not just that, it would also make a ton of sense when you really look at what the dude was trying to accomplish. He wanted to conquer the world, and he clearly seemed to know the true history, considering that he was sailing around the islands like Elbaf that have the murals and books that depict the ancient history. Not only that, as I've pointed out before, he seemed to commit the world's worst taboo according to Sengoku back in chapter 957, and taboo is a word that Oda specifically uses to describe researching what really happened in the world. And Rox seemed, at least to me, to know about the true history and had a real goal of becoming king of the entire world, and this is very crucial because Oda just confirmed that the Holy Knights know about Imu's plan to purge the world through another war like the murals depicts as well. In fact, Gunko revealed in the last chapter that the Holy Knights are responsible for maintaining the destruction of the world that is now very swiftly approaching, and the cherry on top here is, I don't know where I did that. The cherry on top is that Skopper Gaban also is worried about the end of the world based on how he reacted to the Holy Knight's arrival, and Scarper is one of the only people alive to actually know about the true history thanks to sailing all the way to Laughtale with Roger. Roger, by the way, the man who is Rocksteady Xebec's greatest rival, according to Sengoku as well. So really all that I'm saying is that Rox was onto something, and him being a former Holy Knight would explain how he actually knew about the true history, why he would be going around trying to learn more, and why he would not only know about Emu, but try to become king of the world himself, a title that everyone else wouldn't even know is real unless you actually knew about Emu, the current secret king of the world. And it would even add to the point that Loki talked about when he told the Monster Trio that to interact with the Holy Knights while he was at sea, he would have had to been close to becoming king of the world already. Rox being the closest to the king of the world and having to deal with his former allies, the Holy Knights, would make a ton of sense since they are the people sent out by the current king of the world, Emu, to deal with their problems. And here's the deal. Rox was unbelievably powerful, and to get that strong, dominating a crew of pirates unlike anyone else, you have to be at least a Yonko tier fighter, right? Probably beyond that. And the same goes for characters like Mihawk, and honestly probably for most of the Holy Knights as well at this rate. And so if you really want to know why everything we talked about today matters so much and why all these characters we talked about are so powerful, you should check out this video where I break down every Yonko level character in One Piece. With that being said, thanks for watching. Thanks as always to the beautiful Patreons. We got a few new ones. So much stuff going on over on Patreon. Go check it out. And I will see you in the next one. Don't miss it. See you then.